أوجه نداء صادقا
كل أمل ورجاء.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are the news trending today. The Lebanese Parliament's joint committees adjourned discussions on an electoral law that would replace the contested 1960 winner-takes-all system to next week. Future Movement leader Saad Hariri denies that his party is seeking to monopolize power, blasting Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah for sliding Lebanon into his regional battles. And Arab Gulf leaders hold talks with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow as part of renewed efforts to stop the war in Syria. The Lebanese Parliament's joint committees have adjourned discussions on an electoral law that would replace the contested 1960 winner-takes-all system to next week as parties again failed to reach a deal. Hezbollah MP Ali Fayyad defended a proportional representation electoral system, saying his party was open to all discussions concerning the hybrid electoral law. He said, quote, "There could be a middle ground in these discussions. If we want to reach a solution, it should be in the interest of the whole nation." Change and Reform Bloc MP Alaoun told reporters after the session that it was impossible to reach any agreements if every team wants to divide the electoral law according to what suits their needs. Future Movement MP Ahmed Fatfat said there was a structural defect with the current 1960 system, adding it didn't fairly represent the country's sects. Future Movement leader MP Saad Hariri has denied that his party was seeking to monopolize power, blasting Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah for sliding Lebanon into its regional battles. Hariri tweeted, quote, "If the Future Movement was seeking to monopolize power, it wouldn't have agreed on a hybrid electoral law with the Progressive Socialist Party and the Lebanese forces. The Future Movement, the PSP and the LF support a hybrid electoral law which would see 68 MPs brought in based on the current 1960 winner-takes-all system, while 60 are elected based on proportional representation." Hariri also urged Nasrallah to give ear to the silent Shiite majority that opposes his interventions in Syria and Yemen. He also questioned whether the Hezbollah chief valued the percentage of the Lebanese who wanted the election of a head of state and their opinion on the obstruction of the polls. Nasrallah had called for a new electoral law based on proportional representation, saying it would best represent the people and reform the country's politics. Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnouk has issued a decree to postpone the upcoming municipal elections in a North Lebanon town over rising tensions. Mashnouk said the local polls in the town of Tula in the district of Zgharta will be rescheduled to a later date over tension among the families. The decision comes in light of a petition forwarded by some of the town's residents and MPs claiming increased security concerns over differences between the area's families. U.S. State Department Special Envoy and Coordinator for International Energy Affairs Amos Hochstein has met with Lebanese officials on the sidelines of an oil and gas forum to discuss Lebanon's oil and gas reserves and the disputed maritime boundary with Israel. Hochstein was accompanied by acting U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Richard Jones. Though the Lebanese government has failed to act on the discovery of oil and gas reserves off its coast, there's a territorial dispute between Lebanon and Israel over a region of 800 square kilometers on the border between both countries. U.S. officials have continuously vowed to help resolve this dispute.
Movement forward in resolving the dispute in the maritime in the south of Lebanon. We both expressed our hope and optimism that we can reach an agreement that would allow for Lebanon to begin for exploration for natural gas in the offshore. I will continue my conversations throughout the day with other government officials and hope that we can take those ideas and new proposals and move forward so that we can reach resolution as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Arab Gulf leaders have held talks with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow as part of renewed efforts to stop the war in Syria. Today's meeting between Lavrov and the Gulf Cooperation Council foreign ministers comes as rebels in northern Syria continue to make slow progress in their campaign to evict the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant armed group from its stronghold in the city of Raqqa. Reports say Syria is expected to dominate the meeting. However, there are still very big differences between the two sides, which are meeting for the fourth time now on the issue of Syria. Coming up next, leaders of the G7 countries converge in Japan for a two-day summit. More details coming up. Welcome back. The Israeli Air Force has carried out strikes on Hamas sites in Gaza early this morning in response to a rocket attack targeting the Jewish state. The rocket, which hit an open area in southern Israel, caused no damage or casualties. The military said the Israeli Air Force targeted two Hamas sites in the southern Gaza Strip in response. A statement from Ajnad Beit al-Maqdis, a small Salafist jihadi group, claimed the rocket attack, which came hours after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sealed a deal to bring hardline nationalist Avigdor Lieberman into his coalition as defense minister. Iraqi Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi has urged protesters not to demonstrate in Baghdad on Friday because security forces are mobilized in the battle to retake Fallujah. Protesters, mostly followers of powerful Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr, have held demonstrations almost every Friday for weeks to demand a government reshuffle. Last week, they breached the fortified Green Zone, which houses most of the country's top institutions, for the second time in 3 weeks. Tens of thousands of security forces are deployed in the Fallujah area for an assault aimed at retaking the city from the ISIS group. Leaders of 7 leading industrialized countries have converged on Ise-Shima in Japan for a two-day summit expected to focus on the global economy and international security. Donald Tusk, the European Union president, said he would seek G7 support for more global aid for refugees. Other summit topics include terrorism, cybersecurity, and maritime security, including China's assertiveness in the East and South China Seas, where the country has territorial disputes with Japan and several Southeast Asian nations. U.S. President Barack Obama said North Korea's nuclear ambitions pose a serious medium-term threat, adding that engagement with China and other countries had seen progress on the issue.
So far, we've discussed issues of the global economy and the need to continue to accelerate growth, to use all the tools at our disposal to make sure that we're not only putting people back to work, but also helping to lift wages and helping to make sure that we can sustain the momentum of the recovery that's taking place in the United States most prominently, but also we're starting to see some progress in Europe. The fact that the Greek debt crisis has been resolved for a reasonable length of time, I think should help. But we've all got a lot of work to do, and we agreed to continue to focus on making sure that each country, based on its particular needs and capacities, are taking steps to accelerate growth. North Korea is a big worry for all of us. They're not at the point right now where they can effectively hit U.S. targets, but each time that they test, even if those tests fail, they learn something. And it is clear that ideologically they are still convinced that, and Kim Jong-un in particular seems to be convinced that his own legitimacy is tied up with developing nuclear weapons. Well, as I was saying to my team, I wasn't expecting a liberal Democrat to be the newly appointed leader of the Taliban. This continues to be an organization that sees violence as a strategy for obtaining its goals and moving its agenda forward in Afghanistan. We have a democratically elected government in Afghanistan that we're supporting. And our goal right now is to make sure that Constitution and that democratic process is upheld. Not to mention that we're able to maintain the counterterrorism platforms that we need in that region so that Al-Qaeda and now ISIL are not able to take root and use that as a basis to attack us in the United States. My hope, although not my expectation, is that there comes a point at which the Taliban recognizes that they are not going to simply be able to overrun the country, and that what they need to be doing is to enter into serious reconciliation talks that are led by Afghans.
Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump made a late-night appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he voiced concern over the tone of the Democratic presidential primary race. Kimmel also asked Trump about his use of nicknames to describe or label his political opponents.
Are you enjoying the Hillary-Bernie struggle that is happening right now?
Well, I do. It's getting nasty. I had no idea it was going to be so nasty. Bernie.
And you hate that. You don't like that kind
I hate to see it. I hate to see it.
When you come up with these nicknames for these guys, Lion Ted, Crazy Bernie, Crooked Hillary, do you have a team of people that work? Do you brainstorm, or is it just you come up with it and that's it?
The team is right there.
The team is right there. Can I make a suggestion about this vice presidential thing? Why don't you do this just like Celebrity Apprentice? Why don't you get these guys all in a room, or women, whatever you have, and then each week it would be the highest rated show in the history of television.
That's a good idea.
You eliminate one person and they go back to wherever the hell they came from.
All right.
See, this is why I would be your best vice president.
Actress Amber Heard has filed for divorce from husband Johnny Depp after just 15 months of marriage. Several media outlets reported that 30-year-old Heard filed the divorce petition in a Los Angeles court on Monday, citing irreconcilable differences with the 52-year-old Depp, the A-list actor who starred in Pirates of the Caribbean, according to a copy of the court documents uploaded online by celebrity news website TMZ. The couple got married in February of last year after meeting when they appeared together in the 2011 film The Rum Diary. Guinness Rishi, a 73-year-old Indian man living in New Delhi, has had about 500 tattoos inked on his body and his teeth removed to fit nearly 500 straws and over 50 burning candles into his mouth, all in an effort to break numerous Guinness World Records. An auto parts manufacturer by profession, Rishi first entered the Guinness Book of World Records in 1990, when along with his two friends he rode a scooter for 1,001 hours. Since then, he has had a passion for chasing this name in the book, achieving some often bizarre feats, including the world's longest will of 489 pages, the smallest wedding card, the first delivery of a pizza from New Delhi to San Francisco, and the gulping down of a bottle of tomato ketchup in less than 4 minutes. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. The Lebanese Parliament's Joint Committees adjourned discussions on an electoral law that would replace the contested 1960 winner-takes-all system to next week. Future movement leader Saad Hariri denies that his party is seeking to monopolize power, blasting Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah for sliding Lebanon into his regional battles. And Arab Gulf leaders hold talks with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow as part of renewed efforts to stop the war in Syria. Those are your top stories in English for today. The news continue in French right next.
وجه نداء صادقا
كله أمل ونجاح